best way to get better at programming is to practice. And in this example, we're going to be looking at using multiple if-else statements. That way we can check for multiple conditions. As always, a link for this file is provided below. You can download it and then try on your own or follow along. All right, let's go ahead and get started. As you can see from this sample file, we have 3 integer scores, we have an average, and we have what is requested. What we're going to do is check and see. If the score is greater than 80, we're going to print that they pass. If it's below 60, we're going to print that they failed. And if it's between 80 and 60, we're going to give them an option to try again. So how do we go about doing this? Well, it's all about using the multiple if statements. So I'm going to come in here and say if average is greater than or equal to 80, cout you pass. And then we'll have our end else statement. Next, we're going to have an else. However, we want this actually as an else if. So we'll say else if. Notice there's a space between the two. Now we have a condition. This is part of the if statement. If average is less than 60, you fail. Well, what happens if I have a score of 70? Well, 70 is less than 80, so we're going to come and hit this else. This else immediately goes into the if. 70 is greater than 60, so that's not going to display. So we're going to have one more else. As the catch-all, we don't have to worry about having an if statement here. So this allows us to have a selection. Now, once we hit any one of these statements, the rest are ignored. So if my average was, for example, 90, 90 is greater than 80, it's going to hit you pass, and then it's going to ignore all the other else and if-else statements inside that block. All right, so let's go ahead and test this. The first one I'm going to do as a 95, then I'll do a 90 and a 92. This is clearly above an 80 average. Notice it comes up and says you pass. If I really wanted to, I could always put in an average so I can kind of see what that score is, whether it's for testing purposes that I can comment out later, or as part of my display, I can always do that too. But for simplicity's sake, we're not doing that here. I'm going to run this again. This time, I want something that's going to be in the try again category. So I'm going to say 65, 82, 71. This is going to give me an average that's between that 60 and 80, and therefore you see, notice it says you need to try again, which is exactly what I was expecting. It didn't meet the first if, didn't meet the criteria for the second if, and so it fell down to my final false. Of course, I need to test what happens if my average is below 60, make sure that works. So one more time. Notice we gave it some really bad scores, and it came up and said, you fail, just as we expected. So this is working along the lines of what I expect to see based upon my inputs. So this is how we're going to use multiple conditions and multiple tests to provide different types of answers. If you like this example, you want to continue to see more, please check out the rest of this playlist and consider subscribing to the channel.